Hello, good
Hi.
evening, good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are in the world. Thanks very much for joining us. My name's Casper Bartington, and I'm Head of Volunteer and Education Engagements at Association for Project Management, or APM for short. Joining me this evening is Stacey Bishop, Project Manager and Chartered Project Professional. Stacey, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you. Yeah, it stopped pouring down with rain outside, so that's good. I'm actually really pleased to have the chance to chat with you, as you've already achieved so much in a pretty short space of time, it's fair to say. I think you might even be an inspiration to some people out there. But let's take it right back to the beginning, Stacey, if we can. And when did you realise that you were a great fit for project management?
I honestly really kind of fell into it. At school, it was kind of you're going to be a lawyer or you're going to be a doctor, and there wasn't many other options. So I didn't really know it was a thing until I left school and started my apprenticeship. And from there, really, it just evolved. I did an apprenticeship in engineering management, which was kind of more heavily on the project management side than the engineering side. And I moved from that into another company where I started as a project engineer, a year later a senior project engineer, and then a year later a project manager. So it really just kind of evolved from moving out of school into an apprenticeship and falling into it. So from there, the realization was during the journey, to be honest. I realized I was enjoying what I was doing. I was enjoying kind of the control of the project and just kind of seeing it from a bird's eye view, and that's really how I got here.
Okay. We've kind of touched on this then. It sounds like there's a bit of control freakery going on there. So we know that you can do projects, but what is it that you like most about them, Stacey?
I like the bits that a lot of people don't like, really. I like the finance. I like getting into a spreadsheet and into the nitty gritty parts of it. I like people. I'm a people person, so speaking to people, meeting different people around, and the organization is a big thing for me. As you said, kind of in the control freak section. Just managing projects, knowing where I'm going, scheduling, things like that. Yeah, it's all a bit of me. I enjoy it.
Okay, good stuff. That's interesting because, there are some people out there who think, oh, I'm kind of interested perhaps in a project career, but I'm not sure I've got the right subject background, or I didn't do this subject, or I'm not studying for that degree. Is the technical part important, or is it the soft skills for you that have been important so far in your career?
I really think it's a bit of everything. I think to manage projects, you need to be pretty well-rounded. You need to be able to speak and communicate yourself well, but also you need to know how to do the more nitty-gritty stuff, the more technical stuff. To get into the project management role, from where I came from as a project engineer and a senior project engineer, I kind of worked on the technical skills first and moved up into the soft skills, kind of customer facing. So I think either which way around you do it, you need to do both, and you need to develop yourself to do both. It's super important, being able to influence people, being able to talk to customers, reassure them that you know what you're doing, even if it doesn't look so good at the moment, is a big one. And yeah, just communicating clearly, but also knowing and being able to back up what you're saying with the technical stuff that's in the background.
That's really interesting, and I particularly liked the fact you were talking about developing yourself and your soft skills. What were your strategies for doing that?
I think there's no one way to do it, to be honest. I mean, I've worked in a few different walks of life while I was at school and things like that. I worked in retail, which I think really helps if people work in retail, because you know how to deal with the general public, you know how to speak to people well. I mean, I worked behind a bar before, so exactly the same thing. You know how to deal with difficult situations. So just translating stuff from different career paths into what you're doing as a project manager can be super helpful. So people that think, okay, I'm doing this, how do I translate that to being into project management, getting into it? You can really use the skills that you've got, and just move on and take them with you and develop them while you're in that role as well. Obviously, I mean, I worked in a company where I sell pushchairs, so that doesn't really translate to the industry that I'm in now. But those basic soft skills, learning how to communicate, learning how to listen, super important. Listening to the customer's problems, being able to respond to them actively, really translates into this kind of role, even though at the time, I mean, I was 16, I had no idea. It's really helped me now.
Yeah, that certainly chimes with what we've seen over the last, I don't know, 10 years or so. Those companies moving away from, you must have an engineering degree for argument's sake, because that's the sector that we work in, moving much more towards what kind of person are you? How would you deal with this situation? Because I guess the technical knowledge can come right further down the line if need be, but you can't really,
absolutely
be that person who could be a good project manager.
Of course, it's something that you can teach, and really, I mean, I believe you can teach anything. Obviously, there's personalities and things like that. There's people skills, but it's still something that you can develop, even if you're starting from the ground. There's no limit to what people can do if they're willing to do it. So being able to develop yourself and being committed to developing yourself is a huge step to getting where you want to be.
Okay, thanks for the background, and let's fast forward to the slightly more recent past and ChPP. So I'm interested to know, what was it that made you go one day, right, I want to become a chartered project professional?
So that day wasn't very long ago, to be honest. I didn't really, again, know that it was a thing. No one around me was chartered. And I knew about chartered engineers and things like that, but never really thought of a chartered project manager. So when I started as a project engineer, I was guided into doing the PMQ, and from that, it kind of doing that and seeing how it aligned with what I did day to day, really kind of convinced me to move on and do more. So after doing and passing that PMQ, I think it was about a year or so later, I got the funding to do the PPQ. Being not so far out of school, I don't mind exams. I don't love them, but I don't mind them. So obviously doing those is 4 exams, 3-hour exams. So doing them, although it's daunting, I'd not long ago done an exam, so it wasn't horrendous. So moving in, doing that, and seeing how the knowledge I built in the PMQ and the knowledge I'd built in the industry translated to the fact I could apply it to a scenario that was given to me. And basically at that PPQ, I found out about ChPP. So it was super late that I actually found out that you could do it. But from there, I thought, you know what, I'm doing these exams. What's the harm? I'll push myself. I'll go for it, and I'll apply, and I'll see what happens. I'll try my best, and if that doesn't work, I'll try again in a couple of years, or when I next feel ready. But that was kind of the route. I thought, why not? I may as well apply. I looked into what I needed to do, applied for the funding through my company, and they sponsored me. But I didn't really have, from the PPQ into the ChPP, I didn't have any other formal training. It was kind of just research as much as I could, ask other people, which was a really big struggle because I didn't know anyone who was chartered. So that was a bit of an area that I struggled with. But just do my best and apply, and see what happened was the route into it.
Okay. For those people who don't know too much about ChPP, talk us through a little bit that process of getting ready for, your application. How long did that take?
So it probably took maybe 2 months for me, and that was coming out of PPQ, giving myself a little break after PPQ, because it's very time consuming and daunting, and relatively exhausting to do. So giving myself a little bit of a break, and then basically translating what I'd learned during the PPQ, how to apply the knowledge I already had to given scenarios, and almost just thinking, well, if I can apply it to a scenario that's given to me that I've never seen before, pretending I'm a project manager for the council or whatever the scenario was, why can't I apply the knowledge I've learned to my own scenario? And that's kind of the thought process that I went through, thinking how I could apply that to what I'm doing rather than to what I'm pretending to be doing. And in that respect, because it was my own situation and my own circumstance, it was almost easier, because also it's not time limited. So taking your time and actually thinking it through was so beneficial to writing those answers.
And how did you find the interview process? Was that quite daunting, or had you prepped yourself for that already?
So I prepped as much as I could prep. in the fact that the interview is based off your written submission. So as long as you've not lied and you can justify what you've written, then you should be okay. If you pass the written submission, as long as you can justify it, talk about it, expand on the situation that you're talking about, then it should be okay, really, in theory. So yeah, before the interview, I just refreshed myself on what I'd written, thought about potential questions that they could ask me. But you almost already know what they're going to ask you, because you're the one who has already written the answers. You just need to tell them a little bit more about what you've written. So it was less daunting than a job interview, I would say, because you almost know what to expect. But obviously the prize at the end, the ChPP, is daunting to think about. So if you think about it more in a situation where you know what they're going to ask and you've already written it, and as long as you've told the truth, then you're gonna get through it anyway. I'm really, they're just people, you know. I had 2 people interviewing me, but they're just people. Just talk to them, and they were really nice. They're very friendly, and I mean, I waffle, as you can see, and I went over time, but they kind of reeled me back when they needed to reel me back, and gave me that guidance during the interview as well, which made it in the interview much less daunting.
Okay, it almost sounds like fun. So you're now proudly ChPP, and you're the youngest ChPP out there, and you've got lots of plaudits across LinkedIn when you made that announcement on your feed. I'm very jealous of the number of likes you got there. How has your working life changed since becoming that youngest ChPP?
I think for me, the biggest thing that's changed, and that I actually wanted to change, is being a young female in a male-dominated industry. A lot of the time, there's doubt about either what I can do or how much experience I have, or if there's an older male, for example, that may be a level below me. They may not think I know as much as them because I'm a younger female, and that happens very often. I think in that way, I can kind of say, well, I obviously know what I'm doing. I'm ChPP. I wouldn't be if I didn't know what I'm doing, you know. So in that respect, it's really helped me out just to say, you know, I definitely know what I'm doing, like, or I wouldn't be here. But in the other respect, opportunities. There's so many opportunities that have come my way. This being one of them, you know, just having a chance to talk to people and hopefully influence some young females is kind of my aim, to follow my footsteps and just convince themselves that they can do it. It doesn't matter whether it's ChPP or anything else in their lives, you know, just to go for it and do it, because you can do it and there's nothing stopping you. And if you fail, it's a lesson, you know. So I think the opportunities that have come that way are great. Yeah, I love speaking to people, as you can probably tell. So that is great too. And job wise, I'm moving into a new role with a new company. And that's centered around sustainability. So that's really great. That's a subject that has always interested me. So moving into that element as well, I'm really, really excited to start.
That sounds like a fascinating new step, and we know that it's such a hot topic as well across the project profession. Sustainability is right up there. So exciting times ahead. I can't quite believe how much you've achieved in such a short space of time. And I can't believe you've managed to compress all that into about 10 minutes as well. So double congratulations to you on that one. Let's just see if we've had any questions or comments that have come through so far. Yeah, we're just going to take a look because I think we're ahead of real time. So bear with us with a sec, and those questions will come through very shortly. Okay, while we're waiting, because we're ahead of the comments being submitted, have you had the chance to go back into perhaps where you went to school or college to talk to people about what you do and inspire people in that way?
Not since ChPP. More because I think with COVID obviously being so prevalent, there's not been the chance for visits and things like that. But before that, even just being a project manager, and talking about apprenticeships as well. I went to a grammar school, a high school. So when I was in school, apprenticeships were a no-go. It was uni or nothing. So they've asked me to come back a couple of times and speak about that, speak about my journey and where I am now. But since ChPP, unfortunately not. But hopefully after the pandemic, once it settles down a little bit, obviously the numbers are going down. Hopefully when we get a little bit of normality back after the summer, maybe I'll be able to go back in and chat to them.
Okay, That's good. I can see some questions have come through as well, Stacey. So the first one's from Rebecca. So female, tick. What tip would you give to someone who's currently thinking about becoming a ChPP with APM? Have you got any advice to someone who's perhaps stuck halfway through their application?
Yeah, absolutely. One, take your time. I don't know what route you're going down, or whether it's based on experience routes or the technical route, which I went down. But absolutely take your time. Read what you've done, which I find super helpful. I always find kind of little areas which don't really need to be in there, especially with the word limit. I think go back, reflect on what you've already done, and almost use that format for the following questions. So if you've written, everyone's got their own writing style, everyone's got that repetitiveness where they say something, they say it again, and say it again. So try not to do that, and just try and use what you've written before in a different way, as kind of influence for your further questions. But not only that, not only just kind of reading through your current application, have a little look at your project documentation, things like that. I think if you know what criteria you're going to hit and you've picked that 4 criteria, you can have a look through your project documentation, whether that's like a PMP or just your kind of governance record. If you've got a business management system, you can have a little look at that. And some of those words that are in there may trigger something that you think, actually, that hits that criteria. And I'm the one that wrote that PMP, or I'm the one that created that process in our governance system. So I think if you reflect on what you've done with that criteria in mind, it should pick out some areas which you can write about.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Hopefully, Rebecca, that is job done for you. You can move on to the second part of your application. We've had another, I guess, comment and question from Mark in here. So he says, you've achieved so much at a young age. What's the plan for the next 10 years for your career?
Early retirement, a break. No, I think honestly, onwards and upwards. I don't plan 10 years in advance. I don't plan 5 years in advance. As long as I'm happy with what I'm doing, and pretty much still moving upwards, then I'm happy. Develop myself, keep developing my knowledge. So at the moment, I'm doing a degree. So I'm halfway through. I've got 2 years left. That's really important to me to finish that with a really high grade. I've got firsts at the moment, so hopefully I can carry that on in the 3rd and 4th year and get a first overall. But yeah, just keep developing my knowledge, absorb as much as I can. I think that's super helpful, as well as from different people that I work with, different personalities. I think it's not really a plan, but yeah, some small targets, but just keep working forward and see what happens.
There's definitely a lifelong learning piece going on here, and as you're talking there, I'm determined to ask you, you've managed to already achieve so much in terms of professional qualifications and chartered status, and then you go and tell me that you're doing a degree at the same time as a full-time job. How do you manage to manage this time so well?
So the biggest thing for me is prioritizing, dependent on what I've got going on in the workplace, dependent what's going on with my degree. And I mean, I did ChPP and the PPQ at the same time as I was doing those 2 things. So at that time, it was crazy manic, doing stuff all the time. But now that I finished the ChPP and I finished the PPQ, there's a little bit more time, there's a little bit more wiggle room. But the biggest thing is priorities. So if I've got an assignment for uni due next week, then I'll concentrate that a little more. And use some of my spare time to do it as well. So kind of evenings, weekends, if there's exams, obviously revising, spending more of my time doing that. But as well with work, even just with work, with a full-time job, there's always differing priorities. There's always being pulled in different directions. So using that same technique, just prioritizing, assigning myself an amount of time to do each task, and giving myself some contingency in there as well, just to make sure I don't overrun and nothing's late. I think just seeing it for me. I'm a very visual person, as you can see from my wallpaper. I'm a very visual person, so seeing it written down and knowing how much time I've assigned myself for each thing makes it much easier for me to fulfill what I need to fulfill in the right time.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much, Stacey, for taking time out of what is a very busy schedule I've discovered this evening. Loads of fascinating content in there, and lots, I think, for our audience to think about. Congratulations again for achieving what you've achieved in a very short space of time. We don't have any more questions on the live feed at the moment, but if you watch this afterwards and you've got a question for me or Stacey, then by all means pop it in the comments box and we'll get back to those as soon as we can. And of course, you can connect with us on LinkedIn. We're both pretty easy to find. Our names are hopefully underneath our heads right now. And if you want to know more about ChPP, you can, of course, head over to apm.org.uk, where there's a whole section on our website called Chartered Standard. And before I wrap up for today, just one more comment has just popped up from Daniel, and I'll read this out to you, Stacey. It says, "Thank you, Stacey. It's really great to see young women making their way, especially within engineering. It gives me hope that one day my young daughter may grow up with similar ambitions." So I said at the start, inspiration to some people perhaps, and I think it's been proven true there with the final comment of today. So Stacey, thank you very much again. Thank you everyone for watching tonight, and have a wonderful evening. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you very much.